4 months ago, I decided to buy a couple air purifiers on Amazon to help with a dust mite allergy I have. I quickly narrowed it down to the 2 best rated small sized purifiers on there, a Levoit Core Mini and an Aroeve MK01. And that's where I started having a hard time deciding on the one. And honestly, I just couldn't decide, so I thought I'd buy one of each and compare. So now after 4 months of use and testing, I do have a favorite, and I'll share why I like it better and in what situations I would have gone with the other one. So if you're concerned about shipping speed, they arrived at the exact same time. The packaging was decent on both, but nothing special. In fact, in size and look, they are very similar, except for the power wire on the Levoit is removable and it's not on the Aroeve. Also, the Levoit pulls air from a full 360 degrees, while the Aroeve pulls only from the front and the back. They both come with a filter included and installed in the purifier already. Both of the filters are in a bag and will need to be removed before you can start using the purifiers. Operation on both is simple and intuitive. With the Levoit, you just basically have the power button, and when you press it once, it'll turn it on to the slowest speed or sleep mode, and then with each consecutive press, it cycles through the speeds until the last press turns it off again. With the Aroeve, it's a bit more complicated because you have more options. You have the 3 speed settings, then you have several light settings. You have the top light on, then the bottom light on, then both on and both off. Then you have a timer button with a 6, 12, and 24 hour timer. One thing I'll note, this only works to turn it off, not turn it on. It can be useful if you don't want it running all the time and say you're vacuuming and you know you will have more dust in the air than usual, so you can set it on high, set a 6-hour timer, and it will clear the air in that room and then turn off. Both these air purifiers are quiet, but they're not silent. I keep mine going non-stop, so the amount of noise they make is important to me. So I did a few tests. I took each of them and placed them in a room with a decibel meter on my phone and measured the amount of noise they make at a distance of 1 foot on all 3 settings and then a distance of 5 feet on all 3 settings. And the room I was in was at 20 decibels when nothing was on. So here's what sleep mode or the lowest speed looks like on both. I used a paper towel strip to kind of show you how much air is being pushed out. The Levoit definitely pushes more air here, and unsurprisingly it makes a bit more noise. The Levoit made about 22.5 decibels and the Aroeve made about 21 decibels of noise when measured from 1 foot away. At 5 feet away, both were not picked up by the phone, so the phone was showing just a 20 decibel ambient room noise. This is what the second speed looks like on the Levoit, and this is what it looks like on the Aroeve. This is where the surprising thing happened. The Levoit at that speed was actually quieter, with the noise level from 1 foot away at 30.5 decibels and from 5 foot away at 24.5 decibels, while the Aroeve at that speed had a noise level of 34.5 decibels from 1 foot away and 28 decibels from 5 feet away. And this is what the highest speed looks like on the Levoit, and this is what it looks like on the Aroeve. Here, the Levoit was quieter again, coming in at 38.5 decibels from 1 foot away and 30.5 decibels from 5 feet away, while the Aroeve was at 45.5 decibels from 1 foot away and at 38.5 decibels from 5 feet away, which was actually pretty loud. If you don't know how the decibel scale works, a 20 decibel sound is 10 times louder than a 10 decibel sound. The level of noise in a quiet room is typically about 30 decibels, which is 100 times louder than 10 decibels. A typical conversation clocks in at about 60 decibels. So a 7 decibel difference is actually more than it seems. And so while both of these are relatively quiet even at the highest setting, the clear winner here is Levoit. It pushes more air and is quieter overall. I don't have any specialized equipment to check the amount of dust the filters collected, so I'm just gonna kind of go off how they look and what the manufacturers claim. So this is what the filters look like. The Levoit one is definitely a bigger filter and it lasts a little bit longer, but it also costs more when you're buying a replacement. Also, both purifiers have a light that comes on when it's time to replace the filter. Both filters have 3 parts to them. There's the outer protective pre-filter layer that's designed for bigger particles like lint and larger dust particles. Then the inner layer that removes particles larger than 0.3 microns, such as pollen, pet dander, and an activated carbon filter that absorbs unwanted odors, fumes such as smoke, cooking odors, pet odors, and VOCs. And after running both of them non-stop for almost 4 months, this is what the filters look like. Keep in mind, my house is very clean because of the previously mentioned dust allergy, so we have very little carpet and we clean very often. Let's start with the Levoit filter. This is the amount of dust it collected over the course of a couple months. And here it is compared to a brand new filter. You can clearly see the difference. Now this initial layer is just regular dust / lint. What I want to see is how much the actual internal filter has on it. So I cut away the initial layer and looked underneath, and you can clearly see millions of tiny particles all through the filter, to the point that they have definitely changed the color. And this is the Aroeve filter. Here it is compared to a brand new filter. Sadly, the company changed the color of the filter while I was doing the testing, so it's not an exact comparison. And here's what it looks like when I cut away the initial layer and looked underneath. You can definitely see tiny little particles all through the filter, on this one too, to the point where you can definitely see a change in color. There's a clear color difference between where the air was getting through and the parts where it wasn't. So since there's no way for me to test this besides the way the filters look, and they both look like they caught about the same amount of particles and the manufacturers claim the same capacity, I'm gonna call this one a tie. In case you want to add essential oil, both these purifiers have a way to add it. The Aroeve has this little door that opens up on top, and you can add the oil right to this little pad. The pad is kind of uncomfortable to remove in my opinion, and I like the little door that opens on the side of the Levoit, and the bigger, easy to remove pad better, so I'm gonna have to give this one to Levoit. If you still haven't guessed, I actually prefer the Levoit purifier a bit more. And if I had to do this all over again and just buy 2 purifiers, they would be Levoit purifiers. Because in my use of constant running, it's important to have a larger filter that I need to change less often, and to have a purifier that makes less noise. I'm not saying the Aroeve is a bad purifier. It looks nice and it cleans the air as much as the Levoit. From the look of the filters, the lights on it look cool if you want to set it up in a visible place. In fact, if I had use for a timer, I'd say this might be the better choice. But for the things I need, the Levoit is just a better fit for me. So I'd say the choice between the two comes down to individual preferences and planned uses.